Acción.
Good afternoon and welcome to River Talk. I'm Trey Kenney. I'm joined here with Colin, Zach, and Ashlyn. Today is September 28th. Recently we've had the first presidential debate, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. So, what do you guys think of it?
Well, if you want a debate that discussed absolutely no policy, look no further. You want the United States to embarrass itself on the world stage, you found it. It was probably one of the feistiest debates probably we've had in a long time.
Yeah, to put it softly, feisty. We've got Republican candidate Donald Trump. People say he talks all over the place, and then we've got Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton. People say that she talks like a robot, that she was over-prepared.
And that's just, I personally think that's a big flaw, is being too prepared, because then you just sound like, I feel like there isn't enough emotion when she talked during the debate. It sounded too scripted.
Sounded like she almost, knew precisely what question. Now, I'm not going to suggest anything, but it sounded like she knew, exactly how to answer each question.
To me, it was like she was reading an invisible teleprompter, really. Right. She was just...
But I can respect her more for being prepared than I can for not being prepared. I'd rather somebody be over-prepared than to not prepare at all, because that shows they at least took the time to figure out, this might be said, I need to know what I'm going to say. I can respect that.
And I would agree to that if we were talking more about policy rather than personality matchups. And then we had the moderator, Lester, who some people are saying he was less biased to Hillary and more biased to Trump. What do you guys think of that?
I did a little research the next day after the debate, and they actually had numbers that were tallied up. Trump was interrupted 41 times by Lester, and Hillary Clinton was only interrupted 7 times by Lester over the course of the debate. I mean, if that doesn't show even a slight bit, and Trump talked over him a couple times, but it wasn't every single time.
No, but Trump, even historically, so I'm not even going to try to defend it or bash it, Trump does talk like almost eccentrically. He does talk in excess, and that's nothing new. But yeah, even 41 to 7. That's got to be something. And another thing I noticed personally is that at the very beginning of the debate, they said to the crowd, to the live audience, we have to keep you quiet. We got to keep this, and then the first time they kind of roared up what I think with the trumped up trickle down economics, the crowd made a little noise and they were like, okay, let's keep it down. And then any other time the crowd started to pick up a little bit, they just didn't say anything. So I think that, maybe that was just like a problem that couldn't be fixed, or I don't know why it exists in the first place. But
one more thing that I think the debate showed us was that it basically confirmed what the candidates basically are. It showed Clinton was definitely pure establishment. Trump was definitely, he'll say whatever comes to his mind. He's not scripted. He's not anything like that. I think for both parties, probably, it definitely roused up their base, because it just confirmed and showed that exactly what they've been through the primaries.
That's what I think it did more than anything. This debate was almost to the number exactly what people were thinking it was going to be. It wasn't like one party completely dipped or one party completely overshadowed. The results are, we know that Trump's kind of a loudmouth kind of guy, and Hillary's very much establishment, which that's nothing new. Now we've just seen two titans clash.
And I personally think it favors Trump more with how the country's been headed towards anti-establishment in both parties. Sanders, he was the anti-establishment candidate technically for the Democratic primary. Donald Trump, he was actually successful when it came to that. And I just feel like people are sick and tired of what has been done during the Obama administration, and they just moved to Trump just for the pure fact that he is not.
Right. I think we talked about that a little bit last time. So probably a large part of his voter base is people that just want to upset the status quo, and that's a good or bad thing. What I think that's precisely like what people like about Trump. He's so outrageous, objectively. I'm not saying I like or dislike it. He's so objectively out there, and he's full of energy, he's full of passion. And I think that's what a lot of people consider a really good or really bad thing that happened in the debate.
And one thing Trump mentioned during the debate was that he's spending little to no money on ad time.
Mhm.
And Hillary Clinton, she spent like, what do you say, $200 million on ad time. And the polls are still neck to neck, if not tied completely, just from all the money that she's spending just on ads.
Mhm.
And I mean, it just once again shows that people just don't trust Hillary.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you bring up the polls. You know, last week definitely they were a lot more neck and neck, kind of surging back and forth day in and day out. Today, when we checked the polls, at least from what I saw, Hillary's a little bit more ahead.
Mhm.
What do you guys think the overall reason for that is?
Well, I think that one of the reasons was one of Trump's strongest moments in the debate was when he said that Hillary was just another typical politician, you know, all talk, no action. But you see, I don't think that was enough because he didn't hit at Hillary on any of her scandals or any policy differences she might have with the American people. He could have went more on that and made a much greater impact for himself in the debate, but he played it kind of conservative. I think he didn't want to try and offend people because Hillary's a different candidate than, say, the people he contended with in the Republican debates. And I think ultimately by playing it safe, he cost himself that because his strongest moment was saying something that he'd been pushing his entire campaign.
I feel like the debate, he tried to act more when it came presidential, kind of. He wanted to, you know, he didn't want to do the first punch kind of thing. Hillary threw the first punch during the debate.
Yeah, with the trumped up trickle down, I think a lot of people probably lost a couple bets with that. She threw the first.
I've read some articles, and Trump has said and stated that the gloves are coming off the next debate easily because.
Right. And that's important to remember. You know, this was the first debate of what, 3?
Yep, 3 total. Yep.
So you know, if this is what the bar is set at, you know, TV is only going to get better.
Speaking of television, it was record-breaking numbers for the amount of people who actually watched the debate. It was 84 million people tuned in to watch the debate all across the world.
That's good. You know, that means more of the population's getting involved, checking it out. For a lot of people, this is probably their first time seeing what these candidates are all about. You know, obviously for the last year or so, we've heard about these candidates. Well, for Hillary, we've heard for however many years, but you know, people have heard all these things in the media, and the news, and all this, and that, and now they've finally gotten a chance to see it for their own. You know, I think that's what's going to ultimately sway the polls one way or the other.
Absolutely.
So back to the moderator Lester. I noticed that, in my opinion, I think he threw a little bit more of a loaded question Trump's way with the birther thing. You know, Obama's birth certificate, which personally I think, why are we talking about Obama's birth certificate? I mean, if this is the next president. But besides the point, my point being that he threw like a loaded kind of question Trump's way and didn't, in my opinion, didn't throw one Hillary's way. What do you guys think about that?
Going along with what I told you about the amount of times Trump was interrupted, the amount of times that Lester actually threw loaded questions or like follow-up questions constantly to the candidates, it was 14 for Trump and only 4 for Hillary.
Okay.
So once again, he was throwing more loaded questions to him, more so than the actual candidate that many people believe he was being biased for. And when it comes to debates, it seems like people just get thrown a lot of softball questions. There aren't really a whole lot of substance, basically. And plus, the debate times, like, it's only an hour and a half. It's really difficult to go very, very in-depth on subjects.
Yeah, with people as personalities as round and as complex as these, it's hard to try to facilitate a discussion in an hour and a half, you know what I mean? You know, just back to the, I thought that with, excuse me, the birther issue, along with just about everything that Trump talked about, Trump did a fairly good job of bringing the ball back into his court. You know, he took just about any question and made it about money, which is what Trump knows best about. You know, people might say, well, he was dodging the question, which I won't completely disagree with, but like, he has a very certain knack for kind of making it what he wants to talk about. And Hillary, she answered everything very rehearsed and very prepared. She's been prepared to be the president. I think it'll be interesting to see how the questions change, like whether or not they'll still be fairly loaded and kind of stacked against one candidate or the other. It'll also be interesting. Trump has said, I think Fox and CNN both put out headlines saying, Trump's going to hit twice as hard next time. And then, is Hillary going to be just as prepared? Is she going to be just as rehearsed? What do you guys think is in the debates to come?
Well, they talked about securing America in the other night's debate. And what I was thinking they were going to touch on was going to be foreign policy and then immigration at the border. And if anything, that is one of Trump's favorite and probably the thing that he hits the hardest on is immigration. And so I personally think when it comes to talk about immigration, I feel like it's definitely going to arouse a lot more people than Hillary's just amnesty with everyone.
Sure.
Because a lot of the border states, they're definitely sick of it.
Yeah, that's been his big spiel for.
I mean, that's what got him to the top of the Republican Party was a strong anti-immigration. And so it'll be really, really interesting to see, I think, when they finally get to the subject of immigration.
Go.
Welcome back to River Talk, September 28th. Zach, you were talking about Trump's immigration and how that's kind of been one of his strong suits.
Absolutely, and so when it comes to immigration, it's definitely, he's going to hit something that's going to be hit hard on by him. And so what do you think that might be some of the other issues that one candidate might be more favored on than the other?
Right. Well, certainly, with the emerge in social issues as of the last couple of years, I really think that Hillary will really shine when talking about those because, Trump knows money. There's not a lot of arguing we can do over that, but Hillary, in my opinion, she makes a little bit better connection with the very social crowd.
Because she's lived, she has Trump. When he, talked about his father getting money, he's always had this money, and she has it as much as he has. She can connect better with people.
Right. She has I hate to bring up the small loan of $1 million, but
Yeah, anyone for most of us that is not a small loan, and that kind of shows his
in his world that's a small
his reality is very
loan.
different than ours, which makes it harder for him
Which
to always connect.
makes his upbringing and her upbringing very sort of kind of interesting.
It's just, I kind of have to disagree with that because Trump, I feel, does a better job of acting more human when giving a speech or anything like that compared to Hillary, which she's always scripted and everything like that. I personally think when it comes to connecting with people, like from an emotion standpoint, he does a better job than Hillary does.
Because he's so much more fiery in the speech.
When he speaks, like people talked about during the debate, when he spoke, he was fired up, he was revved up, he talked about America, how much he loves his country.
Right.
But when you see Hillary, it's just like,
she's
a robot giving.
Very calm, very mild-mannered, very,
And that's
not as passionate.
Yeah, she seems very passionless.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's another part of the crowd of Trump supporters that are like, we want the establishment out. We want passion. We want attitude.
People who care.
And another thing that I think, just to brag about Trump a little bit more, I think that people see rich people as kind of this one-dimensional, kind of black and white, very snooty, and he's not that. He's this very much so like Scrooge McDuck. He's the cranky old rich guy that likes to yell in person, and people love that. People eat it up.
I've always kind of thought he presents himself as kind of a working class billionaire because of his speeches in coal country. He'll put on a hard hat and he'll give a speech about coal to a bunch of coal miners.
Right. Or
Or he'll go to the NRA and he'll talk about how he goes to the pistol range every now and then. He makes a real connection with blue collar working class Americans that way.
That's actually what I was going to bring up.
And that's why we've seen he has more of the central states kind of locked down almost, whereas Hillary has more influence in the kind of metro kind of areas.
Right.
See, that's another thing, like, we talked about this earlier, about how although she's leading nationally, Trump, state by state, is faring a lot better. And see, that's the thing with US elections, it's all about the electoral college. Popular vote doesn't matter. And so right at this point, even though she might be leading like, by 4-6 points nationally right now, if you go state by state and look at the polls, he is doing a far better job there.
Right.
And especially if you look at, like during the Democratic primaries and caucuses, she had a 10-point lead over Senator Sanders in Michigan right before the primary took place, and Senator Sanders beat her by a pretty big margin, if I remember correctly. So.
Right. We've seen a lot of upsets when the caucuses were still going on. What do you guys think will come with the vice president candidate debates?
Well, I mean, you look at both vice presidential candidates, they are nothing more than, for Trump, it's a safeguard. For Clinton, it's basically an exact copy or replica of the establishment, pretty
Right.
much.
That's
And so, when you go into the vice presidential debate, all you're going to expect is two old white guys talking policy, basically. It's not going to be as feisty, it's not going to be as fiery, it's just going to be, hey, here's what our party wants to do while in office, kind of spiel.
And that's precisely, what more kind of, establishment people want is for people to talk policy, not just, two large personalities kind of throwing jabs at each other with trumped up trickle down. And
That's kind of the thing about this is, this is a debate. These people are going to run our country. We need to know what they actually stand
Right.
for. So, maybe it's not a bad thing that they're going to be small.
no, absolutely not.
That's just the thing I hate about the presidential debate. I feel like more time was took insulting one another than actually talking any way you're going to fix the country.
Right.
I personally think we didn't learn anything new. We didn't learn anything we didn't already.
Right.
That Hillary and the emails, Trump
And his tax returns, right?
Yes.
So with the three the three topics they tried to stay, Lester tried to keep them on track on, which they derailed rather quickly. What do you guys think about, what do you think the next 3 or so questions should be? What debates do you think should be, what topics do you think should be talked about in the coming debates?
I think definitely the economy, because if the polling is to be believed, most Americans are concerned about the economy going into this election, which I think would favor Trump, because he is seen by most Americans as stronger on the economy than Hillary Clinton.
Because he knows how to throw numbers, and he knows kind of what it takes to make $1 million.
I mean, he's basically been a corporate executive all his life. He understands
He
money,
probably understands
numbers, stuff like that.
What kind of incentives work. What other topics do you guys think they should throw out there? Personally, I think they should bring a little bit more light, because it wasn't shown very much at all by either candidate. They should talk about the inter-country kind of security, like homeland security, with as much kind of rioting and police violence and all this other kind of racially tense protests. Racially tense, I say, because that's the root of most of it, not all of it. But I think that's a very that's one of the things I think they should have at the vice presidential debate, because I think that's the only outlet where it'll actually be discussed, and not just have numbers or jabs thrown around.
2 minutes.
Wait, are we still going?
Yeah, 2 minutes. That was just the 2-minute warning. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I didn't know if it was
You
stopped or
paused or something.
No, keep going.
You're gonna have to-
All
You're
right. Welcome back to River Talk. All right, so what's the last thing you guys think they should talk about in the coming presidential debates? What's the one critical thing that has to be gotten out, in the next couple of debates?
I did some research on this on Real Clear Politics, and what they did was they went by state basis and figured out what exactly concerns most Americans. So it was mainly education, healthcare, the economy, stuff like that. And so I personally think, with the whole spiel about Obamacare and how unpopular it is, I feel like some form of healthcare has to be addressed again. I mean, even though Congress fought over it for 4 years or whatever, it has to be redressed because it is just costing average Americans just way too much money.
Right.
So I just feel like some form of healthcare plan needs to be addressed. Because, you know, Trump, he says that he wants companies to be more competitive. Then, of course, Hillary's like, we need to expand it so that it reaches everyone.
Everybody, right?
Yeah.
And not just those at the top can
Yeah.
afford it, right? Because I mean, healthcare is expensive. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not an adult that lives on my own yet, but you know, it's quite the bill to pay. Right.
And it's an important thing to have, like, and when you have medical bills, like, they pile up really quick.
Mhm.
It is
Uh-huh.
important to have healthcare, so it is a major thing that we need to, you know, figure out what we're going to do about.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you know, I've been under my parents' plan my whole life, and
Mhm.
you know, I don't know, they don't educate you on it
Uh-huh.
either. You know, it's a really complex
That's
kind of discussion.
That's another thing about education is being another concerning issue because although we learn the general things to be successful,
Right.
we don't.
I'll just go ahead and end it
We
when you're ready.
Thank you for joining us for River Talk, September 28th. We hope you have a lovely day.
Okay. Sorry, we'll have to get our cues better. Sorry.
They're gonna start editing that.
You should get like timesheet, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's no big deal. Like I said, it's all funny. Like, it's no big, you know, we don't have to do it perfectly.
He's just like,
Yeah, I know. It was really awkward. I didn't know what to say.